quote, the shocking reality that states and the international community as a whole continue to tolerate all too often breaches of economic, social, and cultural rights which would provoke horror and outrage and would lead to concerted calls for immediate remedial action. In the human rights movement, the mechanisms and processes for the delivery of health services are themselves morally compelling. We don't have to justify why we are in favor of the human rights bill. There are morally compelling reasons that should make it imperative. It should be a no-brainer for any Filipino to provide support for the RH bill. Evaluation of health programs emphasizes distribution in outcomes, not only averages. We are concerned about the entire distribution because reproductive rights theories take seriously the idea that every human being is worthy of respect. Advocates of human rights pay particular attention to disaggregated data among women and the poor because they are particularly liable to practices and prejudices that weaken their agency and the social basis of their self-esteem. Reproductive rights approaches accommodate adaptive preferences. Many poor women do not receive information on how to receive reproductive health care. In addition, our underprivileged women have to accept standards lower than what they need, what they want, or what they deserve. This is the reason why we hold forums like this, to raise consciousness, to provide political education, and to take measures in civil society to expand the imagination and the demands of the excluded group of women who belong to the poorest of the poor. Why the RH bill is controversial. The two most controversial provisions of the RH bill are Section 7, access to family planning. All accredited public and private health facilities shall provide a full range of modern family methods, except in specialty hospitals which may render such services on an optional basis. No person shall be denied information and access to family planning services. Anong problema nila? Wala naman tayong pinipilit dito. Kung hindi sabi lang ng batas, lahat ng taong gustong magtanong tungkol sa paano ko malimit ang aking pregnancy, paano ko mas-spacing sila para hindi sila magkasakit palagi o ako na mismo ang magkasakit. Anong gagawin ko? Dahil ang dami na ng anak ko, wala naman kaming alam ng asawa ko, hindi man kami nag-graduate sa grade school, ano ngayon ang gagawin ko? Ay sabi naman ng batas, di pumunta ka lang sa pinakamalapit na ospital, magtanong ka doon. Yun lang ang batas, just to provide information. I have never seen a nation where a definite minority insists on keeping their Filipino constituency ignorant. What is this country? We come to UP, we come to Ateneo, we come to Miriam, we come to Polytechnic University of the Philippines, we come to all of these universities for education. And yet here are a small group of people who want to prevent our Filipino countrymen from accessing education. Education should never be resisted. It should be pursued almost at any cost. Eh bakit itong mga ito? Anong problema nila? I believe I do not have a problem. They have a problem. Particularly mental in nature. Family planning supplies as essential medicines. The National Drug Formulary, ibig sabihin listahan, official listahan ng mga gamot na kailangan nandyan sa ospital para kung may dumating na mahirap at hindi niya kayang tumakbo sa butika at bumili, meron nang ibibigay na lang sa kanya. Baka mamay kailangan niya o baka mamatay siya kung wala pa yung gamot na yon. Kaya meron tayong National Drug Formulary. The National Drug Formulary shall include hormonal contraceptives, intrauterine devices, injectables, and other safe, legal, and effective family planning products and supplies in accordance with FDA guidelines. These products and supplies shall also be included in the regular purchase of essential medicines and supplies of all national and local hospitals, provincial, city, and municipal health offices, including rural health units. Ang ibig lang sabihin, ang ospital talagang namimili iyan ng mga gamot na kailangan insigida maibigay sa nangangailangan dahil sa tindi ng sakit nila. Kung mahirap yung tao at hindi kayang bumili ng gamot, meron nang dyan sa ospital, sa stock niya, na pwede mong ibigay na lang ng libre para lang masalba mo ang kalusugan ng taong iyon. Ngayon, when we were discussing this in the Senate, one of the most fatuous ideas I ever heard was, kung mamimigay pala ng kondom, magiging mayaman ang mga nagtitinda ng kondom. Eh bakit ang pork barrel namimigay din sa budget? Eh kung may pork barrel, di nagiging mayaman ang mga politiko. Aber. But the simple question is, every time government delivers a service, someone makes a profit in a capitalist system. What is the most basic service delivered by government? Peace and order. You forsake some of your individual freedoms for the sake of being free and safe in your own territory. That's why you agree to a government that in effect will limit your personal liberties. The most basic service delivered by government is peace and order. Di ibig sabihin may pulis at may militar. Di ibig sabihin meron silang uniforme at botas. Maliban lang dyan, meron silang mga baril. Meron pa silang mga eroplano, meron silang mga barko. At hindi lang yan, meron pa silang mga helicopter. Di ang daming kumikita dyan. Ba't hindi nyo tanungin yun? Bakit yung kondom na magkano lang naman yun In brief, the RH bill merely wants to empower a woman from the poorest economic class to march to the nearest facility operated by the Department of Health or the local government unit to demand information on a family planning product or supply of her choice. All the bill says is, kung hindi mo intindi kung paano mo ilimita ang iyong mga anak dahil sa mahirap lang kayo at nagkakasakit na kayong lahat, wala man lang kayong makain, dadagdagan mo pa, ay di pumunta ka lang sa pinakamalapit na ospital publiko at magtanong ka doon. Yun lang sabi ng ating panukalang batas. Kailangan, bigyan mo ng impormasyon yung taong nanghihingi. Sasagot ka lang naman sa tanong niya Ano naman ang masama doon? The bill at the simplest level wants to give an indigent married woman the freedom of informed choice concerning her reproductive rights. Ganito misis ito. We'll start from A to Z. Ganitong pwede mong gawin. Ngayon, bahala ka kung anong piliin mo. Yun lang naman yun. Wala namang pilitan We will include all possible family planning methods and procedures. Kaya siya ngayon ang mamimili. What is so bad about this? This is information. It's like torturing Copernicus because he said, contrary to what the Catholic Church said, the Catholic Church said, the entire universe revolves around planet Earth. Poor Copernicus, who was actually a UP student, worked hard, stayed up all night long for many years, and then finally, eureka, in his eureka moment. I worked out the theorems and the formulas. No, it's not true. The earth revolves around the sun. And for this reason, the Catholic Church tortured him. That's what they did in those times. Now, P and I are saying, the earth revolves around the sun, and we are now being tortured. What the? If the bill is highly controversial, it is not because it is dangerous to humans or to the planet. It is not subversive of the political order. It is not a fascist diktat of a totalitarian power structure. The reason this bill is so emotionally charged is because of the fervent opposition of some in the Catholic Church in the Philippines and those who wish to be perceived as its champions with a moist eye on the 2013 elections. Every year that a new Congress is convened, an RH bill is filed, provokes heated debate, consumes tons of newsprint, and then it lapses into a coma. That's what happened to me when I entered the Philippine Senate. I lapsed into a coma. There it remains until it is resurrected at the next Congress, only to go through the same rigmarole of passion, flailing arms, doomsday scenarios, threats of Armageddon, and an implicit competition among its champions for canonization as defenders of the faith. And yet the rest of the Catholic world is unimpressed by the implicit threat that if the Congress passes the RH bill, an asteroid will dive straight into planet Earth and obliterate the entire human race, particularly those who are pro-RH. In fact, the very opposite has happened. The majority of Catholic countries have passed reproductive health laws, led by Italy, where the Vatican is located. They have an RH law there. The other Catholic but pro-RH countries are Spain, Portugal, Paraguay, Mexico, Guatemala, Ecuador, Colombia, and Argentina. Of 48 Catholic countries profiled by the UN Population Fund, only 6 countries did not have an RH law. The Philippines is among these 6 stragglers. Apart from the Catholic Church, all other major religions in our country support RH, namely Iglesia ni Cristo, represented here by the New Era University contingent. Will you please stand up so that we can acknowledge you? Iglesia ni Cristo, National Council of Churches in the Philippines, Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches, the Interfaith Partnership for the Promotion of Responsible Parenthood, and the Assembly of Darul Ifta of the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. It is inaccurate to employ the term, quote, Catholic Church, unquote, in describing the anti-RH group. The more accurate term is, quote, Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines. Because the CBCP is not the entirety of the Catholic Church. Under the more enlightened philosophy of Vatican II, the Church is not the Pope or the bishops or the priests. Oh, sino ngayon ang simbahan? Hindi naman pala sila eh. Nagpapanggap-panggapan lang sila. These church officials are not a privileged caste, like in caste system. They are not a privileged caste. They are not necessarily superior to the entire faith community. The church is the whole people of God. And there are many Catholics who adhere to the teaching of liberation theology that the Catholic Church should observe a preferential option for the poor. According to liberation theology, before we seek salvation, we must seek liberation for the poor from poverty, disease, and untimely death. That's why liberation theology is so popular among young people, because they can see so clearly what is wrong and what skews our society today. The Filipino people, regardless of religion, have already voted in favor of RH. According to the survey conducted just this June 2011 by social weather stations, 73% want information on legal methods available from the government, while 82% say family planning is a personal choice. This is the will of the Filipino people. It is the democratic expression of what the public wants from government. The anti-RH groups are mute on this ineluctable fact. Eh kung rule of the majority have spoken. Ano pa ang pinagsasabi nila sa Senado? Hindi sila makasagot sa mga asawa na sa mga bahay nila, kaya sagot sila ng sagot sa Senado. Kaya nga ako paalis na sa Senado before they kick me out. The inflexibility of the traditional Catholics is anchored on the encyclical entitled Humanae Vitae, issued in 1966 by Pope Paul VI. In paragraph 11, he wrote this notorious line, quote, "The Church teaches that each and every marriage must remain open to the transmission of life, period," unquote. So every time you have sex, you have to spring out of your bedroom and say, "Voila, eureka, here's another child." If you do it 3 times a day, you have to produce 3 children. In applying natural law, the encyclical relies on the rhythm method, or the restriction of marital relations to sterile periods of the month. Thus, the basis of the encyclical is merely biological. I have to emphasize that the encyclical is not a so-called non-infallible statement of the Church. In other words, this encyclical, Humanae Vitae, is fallible. Humanae Vitae caused a worldwide tempest. It created a backlash that eventually resulted in placing limits on Catholic teaching authority on moral issues. This backlash has taken the form of the doctrine of primacy of conscience. That is to say, of the educated conscience. This doctrine is based on the document entitled Declaration on Religious Freedom, issued by Vatican Council II. In note 3, it declares that we are bound to follow our conscience faithfully in all our activity, and that no one, quote, is to be forced to act in a manner contrary to one's own conscience, nor, on the other hand, is one to be restrained from acting in accordance with one's conscience, especially in matters religious, unquote. That is why Vatican II is so famous. It opened the black doors of ignorance and prejudice of the Church to the fresh blowing winds of liberality and individual conscience. Now let me surprise you, and I hope shock the CBCP. I want to give you the ultimate word. The present Pope Benedict XVI, whom I have met, used to be known as Father Joseph Ratzinger. As a young man in 1968, he served as chair of dogmatic theology at the University of Tübingen. In this capacity, he wrote a commentary on the encyclical Gaudium et Spes, or the Church in the Modern World. He said, quote, "Above the Pope stands one's own conscience, which has to be obeyed first of all, if need be, against the demands of church authority," unquote. That's what he said. If I have the gall, I will remind him when I see him. You know, when people see the Pope, they immediately break into tears, they fall on the floor, they don't know what to do. I look at the Pope and say, "Would you have made entrance exam to UP?" He said, this is the present Pope, Benedict XVI. Above the Pope stands one's own conscience, which has to be obeyed first of all, if need be, against the demands of church authority. Thus, in effect, the Pope himself teaches that there is a basic right for RH advocates to observe the primacy of conscience. Why the RH bill is necessary? We should urge Congress that in both chambers, the debate should conclude and legislators should come to a vote in order that this recurrent issue can stop hogging the national agenda every time a new Congress is convened. Let the Filipino know the principled stand of every legislature so that in the coming 2013 elections, the electorate in whom reposes the sovereign might of the state will know whom to reward and whom to punish. There is an urgent need for an RH bill because 11 mothers 11 mothers die every single day from childbirth and pregnancy-related complications. There was a big to-do about this statistic of 11 mothers dying every day in the Senate. I think they wanted something more accurate, like 11 and a half, 11 and 1/4. 11 mothers die every day. 3,000 to 5,000 mothers die every year from pregnancy and childbirth complications. 162 mothers out of 100,000 live births die. 11% of all deaths among women of reproductive age in the Philippines are maternal deaths. 23 million from 15 to 49 years old are of reproductive age. 15 million are at risk of pregnancy. Thus, ladies and gentlemen, the statistics in favor of an RH law are overwhelming, while the sophistic procrastination of politicians are underwhelming. Smokescreen, the logical fallacies in the RH debate. There is no idea as powerful as an idea whose time has come. Politicians seeking to earn the favor of the Catholic hierarchy pose and preen on the national stage. But for every single day that we consume a nitpicking debate resulting in logical fallacies, the clock ticks, and every single day, 11 women die from childbirth complications. Before this day is over, today, 11 Filipinas from the poorest sections in society will breathe their last. But look at what the politicians are doing. Devoid of any substantial argument on the merits, they engage in what any college class on logic would immediately recognize as a logical fallacy. Let me give you just a few examples. The abortion fallacy. Abortion is an artificially induced termination of pregnancy for the purpose of destroying an embryo or fetus. Really? Then there should be an urgent need in abortion in our government, because my impression is that some of our government officials are embryos or fetuses. Conception is the prevention of pregnancy from being a consequence of sexual intercourse. Therefore, if there's no pregnancy, there can be no abortion. Is there anybody who disputes this proposition? I'm going to hit you. But anti-RH groups keep chanting the mantra of abortion or abortifacient. This is the fallacy of the red herring, because it uses irrelevant material to prevent a conclusion being reached in its absence. The fallacy of the beginning of life. Identification of the precise time when life begins is recklessly claimed by some people who can only be called delusional. Alam na alam nila kung kailan nagiging buhay ang isang egg plus sperm combination. Alam na alam nila. Wala silang ginagamit na high technology. Hindi man nila ginagamit utak nila. Ewan kung anong ginagamit nila. The truth is that there is no accepted authoritative finding accepted by the medical and scientific professions on when life begins, much less on when the soul begins. The Constitution, Article 2, Section 12 provides that the state, quote, shall equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn from conception. Conception is the act of becoming pregnant or of creating a child in the womb. It could be defined as the process by which a set of human cells becomes human with characteristics defined as human life. Conception, according to the scientists and the doctors, is not an exact scientific term. Kaya hindi natin talaga malalaman kailan nangyari ang sinasabing conception. The issue today in the RH debate is whether conception begins at fertilization or at implantation. Alam ba ninyo kung anong diferensya o ano? Fertilization is the process of penetration of the egg cell by the sperm cell. It's like a meeting of UP and Ateneo. And the combination of this genetic material to form the fertilized egg or zygote. You see many of these zygotes walking around in Congress. I've had a hard, long week, and I'm just trying to have some fun. Implantation is the attachment of a fertilized ovum on the wall of the uterus. So kaibang fertilization, nag-meet pa lang sila. Then they go look for a home, the wall of the uterus, and that is implantation. So fertilization comes first and then implantation. According to the statement issued in August 2011 by the Universal Healthcare Study Group, which is a part of the National Institutes of Health in UP Manila, quote, "No one equates conception with fertilization." Hindi ka nag-uumpisa bilang isang tao, ulit nagkita ang egg at ang sperm dahil pwede pang maraming mangyayari dyan eh. Baka mamaya nalito si zygote at napunta sa ibang bahagi ng nanay niya o kung may nangyari doon sa loob at hindi siya matutuloy. Moreover, quote, "All contraceptives, including hormonal contraceptives and IUDs, have been demonstrated by laboratory and clinical studies to act primarily prior to fertilization." Ang contraceptive, ayaw niya magkita si sperm at si egg. Kaya ano naman ang abortion doon? Hindi pa naman sila nagkita eh. Pwede ba silang sungkitin ng iba? To summarize, conception begins only after fertilization, but there is no precise scientific definition of the precise moment when the set of cells can be called human. Defining a specific time frame is simply not realistic at this time. During this stage of our evolution as a civilization, maybe in the future we'll be able to do it. This is the logical fallacy of affirming the consequent, meaning it confirms the consequent in order to prove the antecedent. It is also the fallacy of amphiboly, meaning the fallacy of ambiguous construction. The fallacy of population imperialism. It is claimed that the U.S. needs widespread access to the mineral resources of less developed countries like the Philippines, but population pressure and the anti-imperialist attitudes of the youth stand in the way of the American hegemony. During my time here, we were always participating in demonstrations before the U.S. Embassy because we were so anti-imperialistic. Even until now, that is still the prevailing mood or the zeitgeist here in UP, I believe. During my time, you not only had to be a student leader, willing to stand on top of a jeepney and speak through a megaphone, you also had to be a very fast runner because when the policemen started to hit you with the clubs, you had to run as fast as you could. Therefore, according to the anti-RH group, births in certain countries in the Philippines should be limited, and the RH bill is just a form of US imperialism. This scenario is highly likely, and I would not put it past the US to develop this strategy. Kaya-kaya nila talaga yan. However, family planning is not only an advocacy of the US, but also of the entire United Nations. In addition, the best economists of the country, who just happen to be UP professors, issued in 2008 a paper entitled, quote, "Population, Poverty, Politics, and the RH Bill," unquote. It supports an RH law as an integral part of the strategy for development and poverty reduction. The Economics 27 said categorically, "A rapidly growing population has a negative impact on economic development," unquote. And they noted, quote, "Contraceptive use remains extremely low among poor couples because they lack information about and access to them," unquote. Ano naman ngayon ang mali ng RH Bill? Ulit sinabi pala ni Kissinger noong kapanahunan niya, utro rin yung taong yan, hindi rin nakapasok sa UP, kaya ganun magsalita. Sabi niya, maraming mineral resources ang Pilipinas, pero kung maraming Pilipino, di maubos nila. Kaya dapat gumawa tayo ng paraan na maengganyo sila na kukunti lang mga anak nila para magsusobrang mineral resources mabibigay nila sa Amerika. Yun ang kanyang teaching. Well, not only the Philippines, but also a few other countries. Eh, kasalanan ko ba? Kung parang scrambled eggs yung isip ni Kissinger na yon? Ano naman ang relasyon niya sa mahirap na nanay na may buntis? He wants Filipinos according to that theory, to remain limited in population. Conversely, he would want the Americans to have an expanded population until the whole planet is populated by Americans who look like him. That in itself is an argument for birth control in the United States. To demonize lower population growth because the US advocates family planning for developing countries is a logical fallacy. This is the fallacy of argumentum ad populum, appealing to popular anti-American prejudice instead of presenting relevant material. Finally, just one last example. The argument that pro-RH advocates are sinful or stupid. Anti-RH groups use various personal insults against us as if name-calling will suffice to stop or even to reduce maternal mortality. This is the fallacy of argumentum ad hominem, or undermining an opponent's argument by insults calculated to substitute personal traits for arguments on the merits. This is unfair to use argumentum ad hominem against the pro-RH group. But in Facebook and Twitter, I don't know if I will make the same proposition. Maybe you can make argumentums ad hominem against the anti-RH group. I will stop here, but I've shown you that the RH debate in Congress is a long-winded theater art on how to trivialize an important national policy. I suspect that the debate will not end by the time budget season begins and all pending bills will be shelved. If we allow the critics to have their way, RH will always be a work in progress until climate change brings about another global flood and obliterates all of human civilization, including those who think that a few mothers dying every day from childbirth complications is a mere negligible factor in the grander scheme of things, like the coming 2013 elections. Enough. Send an email to every single senator and congressman. Tell him you're watching. Say, I am watching you, you son of a bitch. Tell him I'm watching you, and that you will not vote for him forevermore if he's anti-RH. Not only that, campaign actively against anti-RH creatures, since they do not deserve the word human. Take our campaign to Facebook, Twitter, Google, blogs, and every form of social media. If any of the news media purposely fail to present a balanced presentation of the RH debate, email the editor and appeal to the ethics of the journalism profession. Today, we mark the centennial of the great UP College of Law. At one time, I earned a gold medal here as best debater. In commemoration, Senator Pia Cayetano and I challenged any UP Law graduate in the Senate to a debate on RH in any neutral public forum to be shown on TV before a university audience. Let the young people decide the social legislation of this country. There is a mother of 7 in a hovel in a squatter's area near you. She's old beyond her years. Her eyes are dimmed by despair. She is undernourished, and so are her children. Her husband is an itinerant manual worker and cannot always afford to put food on the table, never mind buying medicines or paying for school. The government health worker has warned the couple that another pregnancy might pose a risk to the life of mother and child. But the couple do not know how to prevent pregnancy. Will you leave mother and child to die because of mere ignorance? I do not want this mother to die 9 months from now. I refuse to allow it. I might never see her, but as a Filipina, I lift her hand and pray with her what the poet said. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Ladies and gentlemen, help the poorest Filipina mother. Help her to become the master of her fate and the captain of her soul. Thank you very much.